We are incredibly excited to get started here. This is our second session for our new Microsoft Federal Business Application series that we kicked off. We had our first in December. We had some feedback from y'all, which we greatly appreciate. We tried to incorporate that into this session. And before we get started, I wanted to just go over quickly our code of conduct. There's a lot of text here, but to summarize this, please just be respectful and treat everybody with respect. If people are putting comments in the chat, we do reserve the right, if you are being disrespectful of somebody else, that we can pull you out of this call. In terms of what we're going to be talking about today, this is the setup. First, we're going to be doing a quick overview of what our US government cloud story is specific to the federal market. Then we're going to be talking about some new feature updates specific to GCC, GCC High, and DoD for Dynamics and Power Platform. We're then really incredibly excited to have MERP Systems with us. They're a fantastic Microsoft partner, and they've developed an incredible FOIA management solution that's built on top of Dynamics and Power Platform. They're also going to show you how you can integrate that with an Azure Cognitive Services API to do PII Redaction automatically. From there, we're going to kick it off to a person on my team who's actually going to do a deep dive of Power Automate RPA. And so if you haven't seen our RPA solution yet, that'll be a really great demo. And what we're going to do with that is we're actually going to show you Power Automate RPA in action, leveraging Azure Cognitive Services to then use Adobe to actually do redaction of documents. And then lastly, we'll wrap this up with a quick Q&A. And we will, at that point, take this session off of recording. So if people do have questions that they want to ask, put those in the chat, and we'll try to address them then. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So quick introductions of people that are leading this call today. My name is Steve Woonward. I am a technical director for federal civilian business for business applications at Microsoft. We also have Prem Nair. He's the co-founder of MERP Systems. And then we also have Ryan Williams, who is a technical specialist on my team, and he's the one that's going to be showing a deep dive of Power Automate RPA today. One of the things at Microsoft is we are incredibly passionate about open source and GitHub. Specific to federal, we now have a Federal Business Applications GitHub repository. We created that a few months ago, but we're really excited with the content that we have out there, and that's definitely something for y'all to check out. The idea is that we have demos, white papers, and solutions specific to the US government clouds and what you can run across Dynamics and Power Platform. We hope that that's going to be a landing page for y'all to go to see feature updates and different things that you could do with the Microsoft Business Application Stack. In addition, we also created a page just for this webinar series. So the last event that we had in December is now recorded. You could watch that on demand. Just go to our GitHub page, as well as the link for the registration to this one and future events that we have too. So we have another one cooking in February. We'll add details to that shortly. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to set the stage for why we have what we call Microsoft Business Applications. This here is a graph just showing over time the disparity between the need for custom applications across organizations in the world to just the number of professional software developers that are out there. There has been a gap, but that gap, unfortunately, is continuing to grow exponentially. And with that, there is now this low-code evolution. So at Microsoft, we have an incredible low-code offering of both Power Platform and Dynamics. And the idea with this is that it enables more people in your organization to be able to build applications faster. And it's also not siloing from professional developers. We call this idea of fusion teams, where you can have developers and low-code makers working together to build applications rapidly for your organization. And just to kind of set the stage of what are the products that we're talking about here, I wanted to just overview what all the different products are at Microsoft and where they all fit in. On the left of this spectrum are products that we all know and love today: Office 365, Outlook, PowerPoint, etc. All of these applications you just download and you install. There's not a lot of configuration to do that. On the other end of the spectrum, we have our world-class Azure Professional Developer Services. You can think of these as Lego building blocks to build just world-class applications on top of these services inside of Azure. Now, in the middle, that's where our business applications portfolio lives. We have Power Platform, so Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agents. All of these are low-code technologies that makers can use without writing C# or JavaScript or Java code to implement those. We also have on top of the Power Platform first-party Dynamics applications. One example of that is Dynamics 365 Customer Service. This is a modern customer call center. So for any federal agency that deals with support questions from US citizens, that's a great application to be able to leverage there. What's even cooler is we now have available in the government cloud something called omnichannel, which really means that there's different modalities or different forms of communication that US citizens can interact with these applications. So it's not just a phone call, it could be text, it could be WhatsApp, it could be Facebook. There's lots of different ways to get communication so we can meet US citizens where they're comfortable with from a communication perspective. And so in that red box, when we talk about federal business applications, that is specifically what we're talking about. This community, the Federal Business Applications webinar, is always going to focus on these products right here. Now, when we talk about what we have available for US federal customers, there are a few different flavors of sovereign clouds that we have today. GCC, by the way, GCC stands for Government Community Cloud. So there's a GCC, GCC High, and DoD. Each one of those have different security requirements that those meet. They're all different dedicated data centers dedicated to the US government market. And the idea here is that Microsoft is committed to meeting the federal government where they are with their security requirements and delivering world-class cloud solutions there. Now, with the product updates, I wanted to just highlight a few here really quickly. And so let's get started with that. The first one is with Power Automate Desktop. So Ryan's going to be doing a great deep dive on Power Automate shortly after this. But one of the ways you get started with RPA for Microsoft is the Power Automate Desktop client. That is available with a freemium use rights for Windows. And historically, that did not work for US government customers. We're really excited to announce that the product teams worked really hard that at the end of this month, there will be an updated version of Power Automate Desktop, and that will enable you to use Power Automate Desktop use rights with Windows, which means you can get started really quickly with RPA at no cost. Now, also know that there are differences between this free Windows use rights versus the actual paid Power Automate RPA, but it is a really nice way that you can get started with RPA today or shortly when this is released. The other one I wanted to announce for those that are in GCC High and DoD, Dataverse for Teams is now available. If you're not familiar with what that is, it lets you integrate low-code Power Apps inside of Teams and build applications really easily inside of that. The other update that we wanted to announce is AI Builder. AI Builder is available today in GCC and GCC High customers. We announced in November at Ignite that there is this new use rights of AI Builder that will be included with certain Power Apps per apps and Power Apps per user licensing. That's commercially available today, not quite there for government yet. But the product group is working really hard on this one. We hope that in a few months we'll have a better update for y'all, but just know that is in the works. But today, AI Builder credits will not be part of Power Apps per user or Power Apps per app in the government. You can still do AI Builder in GCC and GCC High. It just requires you to do an AI Builder capacity add-on or to do Power Automate RPA per user to get those AI Builder credits. From a connector perspective in our government cloud, I want you all to make sure that you know that there is a public survey that you can submit. This goes to the product group's backlog. So for anything that's missing today in GCC, there is a way that you can have feedback going back into that. And then the idea is that once those land in GCC, we will then also make those available into GCC High and DoD. Now, specific to GCC High and DoD, hold on one second. Sorry about that. My dog, he likes to go in and out. Specific to GCC High and DoD, we do have a new feature that's going to be landing at the end of this month. So up until this point, there has been a gap in terms of what the connectors available in GCC High and DoD are versus GCC. One of the reasons for that is we did not have a feature enabled to allow tenant admins to enable or disable third-party connectors. That feature is going to be landing at the end of January and will give GCC High and DoD customers the ability to include the same connectors that you'll see in GCC, also in GCC High and DoD. So just know that when that lands, you will have to coordinate with your tenant admin for your tenant to make sure those connectors do become available. And this is just showing you a flow of that. So the idea is that that public survey that you could submit to goes to the backlog. Those connectors will first land into GCC, and then from there, they will flow into GCC High and DoD. But just know, once again, in GCC High and DoD, the tenant admin just has to enable those third-party connectors. That's how it's going to work in GCC GCC High, and DoD. The last thing that I want to share you all with in terms of an update, if you didn't know about this yet, we are also committed to being as transparent as possible in terms of the features that are available in our government clouds. There's a public link here. This document gets updated around once a month by the product group, and it will go for all of those features that we had in that red box. It will show you features that we know are not available today and are coming into the GCC, GCC High, and DoD clouds, but not there yet. We also sometimes put timelines when we know that there's a roadmap for these features. We'll put them out there too. So it's a great place to kind of check back. And now, without further ado, I'm incredibly excited to introduce our Microsoft partner, MERP Systems. And they're going to be talking about their company and also the FOIA request management solution that they've built on top of Microsoft's business application stack. So welcome, Prem.
Steve and the Microsoft team, thank you so much for providing MERP Systems this important opportunity. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can give you a quick introduction about who we are and what we do, and then jump right into the FOIA case management system demo. So we've formulated a quick agenda for you. We'll just quickly talk about who we are, what we do, our solution focus, our experience summary that demonstrates our deep understanding, followed by the accelerator solutions that we built on the low-code, no-code platform of business application layer of Microsoft, and then immediately jump into the system demo followed by Q&A. MERP Systems headquarters in Herndon. We are an 8A certified CMMI level 3 service priced enterprise. Our services are available on GSA schedule. We are also a STARS 3 contract holder. For some of the state and local customers, we hold a CMAS contract with the state of California as well. We serve federal agencies, state and local governments, and nonprofits. Nonprofits primarily because a lot of these case management systems overflow into support system for nonprofits. Areas of expertise, whether it is a paper-based system that is due for modernization or a system that is to be retired or deprecated, we enable you to transform that application into a new enterprise-grade application using the business applications layer of Microsoft, which comprise of the low-code, no-code Power Apps, Dynamics 365, CRM portals, SharePoint, Azure, and .NET. And because of our depth in experience and expertise, we've created a showcased a long-standing experience and support for case management systems and citizen engagement systems. We are a Microsoft Gold partner as well as an Adobe certified partner. As Steve was mentioning, the purple circle at the center, the Power Apps, is the layer that we use to create these enterprise-grade applications that becomes very friendly to a business user, wherein a business user can create, enhance the applications that are built using the low-code, no-code framework of Power Apps. Supplemented by Power BI, which helps us and you to create very compelling, visually appealing drill-down dashboards, supported by Power Automate that supports the RPA, AI, ML type of situations, and then the Power Virtual Agents. Here is where we have supported a Dynamics 365, a combination of Dynamics 365 and Power Apps. For Park Service, we are actually working on an expenditure management system, expenditure management tool leveraged by Dynamics 365 and PowerPoint, small business administration, CDC, Department of Transportation, multiple agencies. On the state local side, we're continuing to support a state of California, CAL FIRE, Department of Pesticide Regulation, where we're actually rebuilding the entire pesticide registration application for the state. For Maryland Insurance Administration, we're completely modernizing their legacy insurance application using the Power Apps platform. So imagine the strength and the power it offers to kind of create an enterprise-grade application for your organization. In addition to this, what also differentiates us is our depth in creating these accelerated solutions. A freedom of information act solution that we developed in tandem with Microsoft, an investigative case management solution that we've developed, an inmates needs assessment system that we developed to evaluate the substance abuse, mental health illness, and other assessment process for the inmates, a grants management system, and a pesticide registration case management system that tightly integrates with the US EPA PPLS system, and a NEPA case management system. So all these 6 solutions that we built as accelerated solutions and have listed on Microsoft Certified Marketplace App Source. With that, please allow me to jump right into the FOIA demonstration. So as many of you know, the process flow for FOIA is usually it is the triaging of the information that comes from the requester is managed by a FOIA specialist. And then FOIA specialist will work in tandem with the bureau officer or supervisor who will provide the guidelines that's required to perfect the request or assess the request. Once that's done, certain times there will be a subject matter expert involved in it. In this case, we are going to call the attorney advisor or the subject matter expert as Chad Evans. And then there is a custodian who would find the related documents, artifacts, and provide it back to the advisor or the supervisor for review, redaction, and then finally send it back to the requester. So what we are demonstrating right now is an overarching process that's applicable in general terms. But we understand every agency work this process in differently. So some agencies do not have, let's say, an attorney advisor as a case maybe. There may not be an additional layer of scrutiny and review that's required in certain agencies. We can manage and tailor those business process flow seamlessly using the Power Apps framework. So here is a typical process flow that's attached to a FOIA request. Sean, as the requester, creates a request. Most often, the agencies do have a manned email inbox or a potential, front page or portal interface that he can or she can request the information. And then in our case, Sean is going to request that Brett, as the FOIA supervisor, is going to receive the information, review the information, make sure that the requested is perfected or not. If it's perfected, he assigns it back to the SME for a review. SME is going to check with the custodian for the artifacts. Custodian is going to find the artifacts from the document library, and the custodian responds back to the SME with the requested document. The subject matter expert validates, testifies, and say, oh, this is great. Once that stage is passed, he verifies the document and sends it back to the supervisor to proceed with sending the invoice to the requester if there is one involved. If not, based on the type of request that the requester did, the supervisor can release the information back to the requester. Other processes such as appeals and other things will demonstrate, and redaction also will demonstrate in the demo. So with that, let's go ahead and do the demo. Rahul, do you mind? Thank you. All right. So today's demonstration will include 2 interfaces. What Rahul is showing is the command and control console, the actual interface that we developed using the Power Apps constructs. And this is the interface that will be used by the agency to kind of triage the information, assign the information, and kind of manage the end-to-end process within the enterprise. And there is also a CRM interface. In fact, this is the interface that the citizen requester will use to request the information to the agency. So let's go ahead and start the request process here. In this case, Sean Lawrence, our requester, is going to request a specific FOIA input from the interface. So as you can see, the portal interface allows the agency to kind of provide all the necessary information, including FAQs and things like that. Let's go ahead and fill in a request here. Sean goes in, and all the relevant fields, including the short description and an explanation of his request, and will this request be made available to the public after the disclosure of the information, the amount that Sean is willing to pay for this request, and if there is a fee waiver request that is being requested along with the justification. Sometimes if there is an educational institution that's involved, they can provide that information. Similarly, an expedited process along with the justification can be submitted here. And then Sean can select the agency or the department that if he's aware of where exactly it needs to be submitted. So let's go ahead and complete that sort of information in here. And then, all right, you just put in the information. let's say, we've kind of tweaked and tailored the solution for many different agencies, but your agency hierarchy and the setup could be, listed in here. So if Sean is aware as to which specific bureau or the office that the request needs to be sent, he can select that. In this case, let's say he selects a specific organization and the sub-department under that. And then Sean can select his communication preference here, email, or how Sean wants to receive the communication back from the FOIA office in terms of his document disclosure preference. And then finally, he can save the specific request and then add in here. And one thing that Rahul is demonstrating right now is how a document can be uploaded, a supplemental document can be uploaded along with the request that Sean is submitting to the organization or the agency. So what we have so far demonstrated is the seamless way for a citizen to kind of funnel the request in. A lot of the agencies do have a manned email inbox that's doing this. We can continue to do that. We can continue to leverage that. What the system would do in the back end is take that email that comes in and create an automated case based on the information that we're going to receive. Now let's go back in here. Brett Johns is a FOIA specialist here. He will receive a communication stating that a specific request has come in from Sean requesting a specific FOIA application, which we'll show you, which means the application is tightly coupled with your exchange or the other email mechanism. He comes in here, Brett Johns comes in here. That's the profile of Brett Johns, and he's the FOIA program officer here. This is the dashboard view, and from there he can go into the details here. He can look at all the information that the Sean has put in here. So he can, by looking at the request type, that is FOIA online, he can see what channel was used by Sean to request this specific information. Here in this case is portal. We can have an email or paper trail, whatever you want will be supplemented by the system. And once that's done, Brett reviews the request details and description. You can see the submitted date, the time, the fiscal year, all of that is captured. Very important for the year-end reporting and also the quarterly reporting. And at this time, a request confirmation email will be sent back to Sean with the registration ID. So at any given point of time, where, in what stage, in what phase the request is, will be communicated back to Sean, an important construct of the application. After careful review of the request, Brett will choose the fee category. A lot of times, if it is an educational institution, media, others, there could be some fee waivers attached to it. This is used later on to decide the fee waiver acceptance. For in this demo purpose, Brett is selecting an educational institution. If there is a litigation request, that can be marked here. We'll talk about litigation once a FOIA request is successfully processed, because that in itself is a huge business process. So under the case file tab shows the case type, case received date, case closure date, request disposition for request. This will get updated once the request disposition happens. Review tab is the place where a request perfection happens. A request can be perfected only if it is pursuant to the 9 exemptions and 3 exclusions as contained in the statutes. So this is something that the Brett will look through and make sure that everything aligns with their agency compliance. And once it's perfected, the program officer will have to check for the jurisdiction. Here, Brett reviews the request to ensure that it belongs under, or let's say in this case, the specific agency purview. If it is under the agency's purview, he will mark the request misdirected as a no. If Brett, let's say, thinks that this request is not within the purview of his agency, then he marks the request misdirected as yes and makes a determination of which agency this should be directed to. And if he knows that, it's great. If he's not, and he will kind of consult with his FOIA supervisor and do the necessary. An email at this point will be sent to the agency, giving them the direction to opt in, to accept or decline the case within 10 days. The requester, Sean in this case, will be notified with an email saying that, hey, your request is now rerouted to the specific agency because we believe that it belongs under their jurisdiction. Now, if Brett thinks that the request is incomplete and more information is required, he can ask for the required information from the requester and can wait for his response. In that case, typical 30-day SLA will be automatically generated to wait for the response from the requester. This varies from agency to agency, but typically it's a 30-day SLA. Let's say, sticking to the positive use case here, where it is a proper FOIA request, the request perfected is now marked. And at that point, the SLA timeline kicks in. So typically it's 20 days. So the system has the ability to track the time that is spent on the specific case. This time, Sean, the requester, is notified with an acknowledgement email, and the process flow moves into the next stage, which is the evaluation stage. At this point, Brett needs to approve or reject the fee waiver request and the expedited request, if any. Let's go ahead and accept the fee waiver request with comments. Let the expedite request be rejected with a specific reason involved in it. Let's go ahead and wait up for the system to just load here. Give us a second. All right, this being operational out of a sandbox, sometimes we kind of experience these kinds of problems. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. All right, so let's assume that, yep, absolutely, fee waiver is approved, and if there is fee waiver is approved and the expedite request is, let's say we don't need to do that, let's reject that with a reason. Okay. Now, after this is done, Brett will do a fee estimation, and that's another instrument that we have built into the system here. You can see that fee estimation based on your agency rule can be customized and configured. He'll select the search staff, how much time are they going to spend on it, the review staff. This is all estimated this time. So once he puts in all the relevant information, the total fee estimate is auto-calculated after implementing the fee waiver, if that's applicable as well. In a positive use case, the FOIA specialist will notify the requester saying that, hey, this was the estimated expense, and the requester, Sean in this case, will receive an email with the estimated amount, and he can respond back with his willingness to pay the estimated amount. Positive use case, and at this time, Brett can update the request payment confirmation as he accepted, and then click on save. Now, make adjustment tab, assignment tab will now appear where Brett can assign this request to an attorney advisor or a subject matter expert here. Let's go ahead and do that here. All right, he accepted it. Let's move on to the assignment tab. Let's go ahead and assign it to Chad Evans. All right, please review this case. So at this point, what Brett is doing is his portfolio analysis is complete. He's assigning the case to Chad Evans, the attorney advisor, or a subject matter expert in many cases. Let's log in as Chad Evans. The profile is now Chad Evans. You can see that at the top right-hand corner. That is the user profile that we're going to use. Chad logs into his account and select the corresponding task assigned to him. And he starts reviewing the details. Under the request processing tab, he can request a supervisor for an extension if he thinks that the date given to him is not sufficient to collect the artifacts and then process the request. Assume that it's not required. He requests, he reviews everything, and it's time for him to request the details from the custodian. Custodian is the primary, user persona who manages and handles all the documents in this case. Let's say this point, he assigns to Stacy Ward. We log in as a Stacy Ward here. She is going to be the custodian. Stacy automatically, and please note, all these assignations are also tied into notifications. The system generates an email to Stacy saying that, hey, listen, a case has been assigned to you, Chad. In this case, a case has been assigned to you. All of that is tied into the system. Now, we're also integrating this into a Teams notification. So let's say Chad is working on, the Teams being the most effective communications medium. It'll trigger an alert to a channel, to Teams, or to Chad, and say there's a case that's pending, and he can log into the system to see what's going on. So continuing with Stacy Ward, it's now Stacy looks through the document, specific request, and she understands, okay, it's time for me to look for the records in here. So there's a button called Search Records. The system is now tightly coupled with SharePoint as a document repository. We can also do the same thing with other document repositories by a seamless integration with API. Let's say she comes in here and she has found the information that's relevant for this case. So now this is the part where redaction needs to be explained. So she found the information. So there are two ways that we have implemented redaction. And the third way is what Microsoft is going to explain to you soon after we're done with this using the RPA method. But in this case, we're going to demonstrate redaction in two methods. One, now that's being shown using a regular expression. We use what's called as an encoding, which ties in with Power Automate as part of the Power Apps platform. Regular expression, SSS, and FFF, and within that construct of the redaction framework, whatever is applicable gets redacted. Let's go ahead and show that. In this case, what we are showing is SSS is the start, FFS is the finish. So whatever the sentence or the word that is in between that specific construct that we gave gets redacted. So custodian now redacted the document. Or can we show the document also once how it would look in a redacted mode? Yeah, this is how the redaction works. So we opened up the specific document in Word, made the changes, or even if it's in a PDF, make those changes editable PDF. You just put in those regular expression, save it, it automatically redacts the document using the constructs that we built in. Now, the second type of redaction that we built, and this is something that we collaborated with Microsoft. In fact, Microsoft team originally worked this enabler, and we took that to integrate into our system. So at this point, let's say Stacy, the custodian, found the relevant artifact, and she is going to download that particular document or the artifact, and then she would come into the case, and under the Documents tab, she's going to upload that specific artifact or the document so that she can start the redaction process. She just goes in. This is the document that she just downloaded from the document repository. She just uploaded it. Now you can see that that specific artifact is now tied into the case. Now she toggles into the redact menu option. Under redaction, you would see that the document is now getting uploaded. Let's go ahead and allow that for a second. Once she does that, what it's going to do is we have built in a Azure Cognitive Service AI ML driven implementation of redaction process. So this is where she is going to do the actual redaction here. You can see that the document just got uploaded in there. See, she selects it, selects the document for redaction right there. And there are two options that you would see that. Okay, Rahul already clicked the redaction there. So at this point, she can additional. So what we've done is the engine, the Azure AI ML engine has been already fed with certain keywords and expressions that need to be redacted. But the user, Stacy, can also add additional keywords that needs to be included as part of the redaction. This tremendously facilitates the redaction process from Stacy's perspective. So once that's done, she can add additional words. And once she's done with it, she can go ahead and click redact right there. Let's go ahead and complete the redaction process. So what it does is it redacts the document and puts the redaction document under the same menu option. We're just toggling today between two screens. Apologies for that. I think the sandbox is performing slow, so it's kind of making us do things twice. But technically what it has done is the information that she has put in, the redaction engine has gone behind the scene and took the documentation, and then working in conjunction with the Azure Cognitive Services, it sort of redacted the document and put it in there. So what you would see under the redaction tab right there is the redacted document in the PDF format. So those two are the two ways that we have implemented a redaction in here. Now let's move on in the interest of time. So the redacted document, you would see that under the Documents tab right there. Let's go ahead and click that. All right, so that you will see that redacted document right under that specific grid. No, that's fine. Let's stick with the Documents tab itself. All right. One of the things that we wanted to continue further in the interest of time, we have 2-3 more minutes left. Right there. Yep, absolutely. Those are the documents that just got redacted. and we wanted to show you that. So the HTTP reference that we included in there, it's also redacted, which shows you the flexibility and the seamless nature of the redaction tool. Okay, let's move on. So the other thing that we want to highlight here is e-discovery. At this point, if e-discovery is integrated with your Office 365, we can also do that, meaning we can search all the tools that are available under the e-discovery platform to search for relevant documents and bring it in here. Now, litigation hold is something that we talked about. We'll come back to that in a minute, but at this point, let's go ahead and move forward with the assumption that everything is fine. This is moving forward, and the Stacy at this point attached the relevant document into the case, and she's submitting it back to the subject matter expert for the review. One thing I also want to bring to your attention is that if you look at the timeline, you can see all the transactions in the chronological order where the documents are being added. So at any given point of time, anyone with the right roles and permissions and the privilege can come in here and look through the case and find out how, in what stage it is, what kind of documents have been socialized, what kind of documents has been redacted and made available. So let's consider no consultation is required in this case. Stacy is good. She's going to assign it back to Chad, the subject matter expert. Chad comes in here and Chad reviews the information. And he's saying that, yep, I am good. I'm good here. And he kind of assigns it back to the supervisor saying that this is good to go. So the similar process of assigning, they can kind of deassign it back to the relevant person. In this case, let's say we're going to come to Cindy Smith as a supervisor. She will open up the review request details and carefully check all the attached records, make sure that everything is to her satisfaction. One thing Cindy will also do here is going to the appeals tab. So the appeals tab is very important. If the requester thinks that the invoice amount is not acceptable and or the request processing is taking longer than expected, the requester can appeal. Even after the case is closed, the requester can appeal. This is the information where this is the information tab where anything relating to the date of appeal processing office, description, disposition, anything can be tracked in here. So after reviewing the documents, Cindy will choose the response type here, whether it's going to be unredacted or releasable, redacted. There are different types in here. She marks whether this is a frequently requested document. The frequently requested documents is something that we will have to, this is a method in which we are actually programming this case management system to make it available when the custodian is requesting or searching for information. She then approves the results at this point. She will also send an invoice. This is the stage where the supervisor would send an invoice to the requester saying that, hey, this is the amount, let's go ahead and get the payment done. And the payment happens outside the system. But once the payment happens, Cindy confirms the payment and she marks as a payment received in here. And she is able to release the document back to the requester. So she can select the appropriate payment received, yes, and this is the document, electronic copies via email. That's the preference that Sean had selected. So she would do that. And at this point, the case is closed. So I'll take 2 more minutes to talk about litigation, right? If litigation happens, this is another important construct of the, FOIA processing. If there is any litigation attached to it, the administrator can come in here and toggle this button called litigation yes. And at that point, let's go ahead and say mark yes. Once the court docket number is added in there, so as you know, most of these litigation will come with a docket number. Once that's there, you would see that once you save the case, it deactivates the entire case, which means nobody can touch or remove any of the artifacts attached to that specific case. And what it also does is it creates if it is integrated, if you have e-discovery in your organization, it can be tightly coupled. It creates a e-discovery case management system in the e-discovery case. And then you can add all the related artifacts into the e-case management system under the e-discovery platform. Let's go in there. This will give an overview of the cases under litigation in the e-discovery and their current status. Let's open up a case there. Let's go ahead and open that. All right. For those who are familiar with the e-discovery interface, this is typically where you would add all those content that are related, whether it is in Exchange email boxes or OneDrive for Business, SharePoint site, Microsoft Teams, groups, Yammer. If you're using any of those data that's relevant to the case, can be flagged in here. It's taking slightly longer today, but typically this is managed from the e-discovery perspective. So let's go ahead and show exactly how we can manage these things. So the custodian you can add a new custodian. You can kind of add everything relating to the case and put that on hold as part of your e-discovery process. All right, so search and analytics is another one. So if you can just quickly show that, this helps in the duplication identification, email threading, OCR settings, everything relating to that. Search and analytics can also be managed from the e-discovery channel. So the system is now very well integrated into the e-discovery that is supported in the Office 365 ecosystem. So that sort of concludes the process flow end-to-end for a FOIA solution. So what we've demonstrated is how the case comes in, how the case is managed, the assignation, the fee calculation, fee management, appeals process, redaction, and then final integration into the e-discovery and other Microsoft Office 365 ecosystem. A couple of things that I want to bring to your attention is, one is the reports. There's extensive report requirements attached to the FOIA system, whether it's a quarterly request or it's an annual request. We've built in these reports into the system that you can seamlessly use. The other point is the integration of the document management system. We have shown you how SharePoint tightly integrates with it, but if there are additional document management system that you need to bring in, we can bring that in so the custodian can seamlessly search and bring those information back into the case system itself. Okay, so in conclusion, what we want to say is this is actually a 360-degree process, and this is something that we wanted to showcase to you before we conclude. The flexibility that Power Apps offers to the business users to change the business process associated with FOIA. So these are the steps that a business user can manage and maneuver so that additional steps can be added, few steps can be redacted. So the system works almost like a Play-Doh fashion where you can add and manage and maneuver the business processes around FOIA. So in conclusion, this system, a 360-degree FOIA solution, is built with two components: a portal component that leverages the strengths of Power Apps portal, and a command and control console which leverages Dynamics 365 and Power Apps, whichever is available to you. So we can give you this solution that also allows you with the flexibility of the template management, as Rahul is showing right now. If there are template management for email communication, if there are additional customization that we have to, configuration that you have to do, the system provides you the flexibility to do those kinds of things. So in the interest of time, Steve, I'll pause here and probably will address questions later on.
Yeah, that sounds great. So first off, Prem, thank you so much for sharing with everybody your FOIA solution that you've created. I wanted to highlight a couple things. For any of the federal customers that are watching right now, this is a proven solution already working with different federal agencies today, which is awesome. There's a lot of investment that's gone in here to really streamline how you can manage FOIA requests. It's also incredibly extensible too. So when we highlighted the PII Redaction solution, we had reached out to Prem, and in a number of days, they were able to implement that into their existing solution. So you can think about other kinds of things that you could extend or customize to with that kind of approach. And lastly, what I think was really neat about this is it showcases not just Dynamics or Power Platform, but the breadth of the Microsoft Office 365 as well as Azure capabilities and what that can look like when you have that all-in-one single solution. Now with that, we're going to pass it over to Ryan. Ryan's going to do a quick deep dive on Power Automate RPA. And I also want to make a quick announcement that we are running a little bit later on time. Ryan's still going to do his thing on RPA. It's just our Q&A section will be maybe a little bit past noon Eastern. So I do apologize about that. But since all this is recorded, you can go back on demand to watch that. But after Ryan's done, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the recording. We're going to allow people to come off mute. and at which point anybody can ask questions then. So please hold your questions till then. But Ryan, please take it away with Power Automate RPA.
Thanks, Steve. Can everyone see my screen?
We can see it.
Awesome. Hey, folks, I'm Ryan, and I'm a technical specialist on Steve's team here in the federal business applications space. You know, as a technical specialist, part of my job is to build demonstrations for our customers. You know, if you're joining us from Department of Justice, Energy, Homeland Security, you've probably seen me give one of these demonstrations. I'll be the first one to admit, you know, not every demonstration is built equally. Some of the use cases that we get, you know, you'll just get by with a single product, maybe some out-of-the-box functionality. This is not one of those demos. I absolutely love this example. We're going to tie together 6 different services and form a totally cohesive solution to solve a business need. So, you know, in my mind, this is what the Power Platform is all about. Let me just kind of lay the groundwork for you on this particular use case and some of the constraints that came into it. We were essentially looking for a solution to reduce the amount of time that it takes to redact documents, right? So in the legacy world, you would go word by word using an Adobe product and kind of painstakingly manually redact these documents. Rather than fully automate the process, however, you know, and have everything done by algorithm, which is certainly possible, we wanted to retain some element of control in the process. So keeping basically a human in the loop to make that final determination on the redaction decisions that the algorithm was suggesting. The other constraint that we had, we wanted to retain the Adobe involvement in the redaction process. You know, Adobe Acrobat is kind of the tried and true redaction tool of choice for the customer I was working with. They liked the classic black bar over text visualization. They liked the interface that they had to go through and review the redaction decision. So they wanted to keep that element in the process. So let me walk you through kind of the elements of this solution one by one, just starting at the beginning here. I'm an agent or an analyst, and I need to redact a document, right? So where do I go? What is my interface for submitting a document for redaction? Well, this is actually a perfect use case for Power Apps, right? Now, Prem and the MERP team just showed you a fantastic demonstration. They were leveraging a model-driven application for their user interface, which is a great use of it as well. I'm going to show you a different style, different flavor, essentially. We'll be using a Canvas application for the user interface portion, and that's going to allow you to choose a file and submit it to the application. Next, so if you've submitted the file for redaction, and you're familiar with PDFs, you know that essentially some of them can just be really glorified image files. We need a tool that is going to perform optical character recognition, OCR. And so conveniently, Power Platform actually has a tool called AI Builder, and that's what's going to actually be doing the OCR function, taking that image and extracting the text and leaving us with just a plain text version. Now, after the AI Builder is finished processing, we have the plain text. We need to run through that text and detect all of the PII within, and that's going to be our target for redaction, right? So also conveniently, we have a connector for Azure Cognitive Services. That is going to be our PII detection function. And this is just a really great example of actually bringing in a pro-code solution into this Power Platform, low-code, no-code world. So if you're not familiar with Azure Cognitive Services, it's a really fantastic tool. It enables you to basically, allow your app to see, hear, speak, search, and understand the information that you're presenting with it. Very powerful, highly suggested if you're not familiar to go check out the Azure Cognitive Services plugins. So as a next step, right, so Azure Cognitive Services, it's receiving plain text. It is going to spit out a list of words for redaction, right? These are all of my PII targets. We actually want to take that into Adobe Acrobat and apply the redactions and, the black bars, and eventually relinquish control back to that human in the loop user. So you'll notice to go from Azure Cognitive Services to Adobe Acrobat, we are going from the cloud to a desktop application. To facilitate that transition, we're going to be using what's known as Power Automate Desktop, and that is the Power Platform's RPA tool. So if you're not familiar with RPA as a concept, robotic process automation, what it really excels at is simulating the human interaction with these interfaces. So think about actually recording the clicks and keystrokes that you make as you interact with these systems. It is going to replicate them, essentially create a script from which it can then automate and automatically process those in the future. The last thing I'll mention, orchestrating all of these different actions, we have Power Automate. Power Automate is going to be responsible for triggering the actions, transitioning the data from application to application, or service to service, I should say. So with that, let's transition and just get a hands-on look at what this process actually looks like. Okay, so first up, again, I am the analyst, I'm the agent, I have a document that I need to redact. So what I'm going to do is go into a Power App Canvas application. Now you'll notice this is just a very basic version of what this application could do. This is more of a proof of concept. So not quite as flashy as the MERP solution that Prem showed earlier, but essentially what you'd be doing from this interface is saying, okay, let me select my file for redaction. In this example, I'm just going to choose a resume. So once we load the resume, oh, there we go. Yeah, you'll see it just gives you a little preview of the document that you selected to target. And then we can go ahead and click on the single button in this application, and that is essentially going to kick off the process and allow the process to continue, which we are actually going to watch live here. And if we refresh, I'm going to bring up the Power Automate interface, and we're actually going to watch as it goes through and performs each of these line by line. So I can start to narrate what's happening, but you'll notice here in just a couple of seconds, you're going to see Power Automate Desktop take over control of my desktop and actually perform all of the redactions in the Adobe Acrobat interface. So I likely won't get through all of this until I'm interrupted, but I'll go ahead and get started. If you're following along, the first step is the Power Apps, right? Well, we'll just go ahead and let it do its thing. So it's now taken over control of my desktop. This is Power Automate Desktop RPA, has full control over the Adobe Acrobat product at this point. Again, the idea here is that it is going to automatically take that file, using the words that the Azure Cognitive Services has detected. It's going to load up that PDF and redact those words from this document. So you can see it's going through, it's opened the file, it's now opening the redaction interface from within Adobe. There's a tool called Find and Replace, or Find and Redact, essentially. So I can go in, or it will go in, and then it's just going to start feeding it every word that it detected as PII. Now you'll notice as it goes through, you can configure this in Azure Cognitive Services in terms of the words that you actually select for redaction, or the types of words. It's looking for names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, things of that nature. You could also really easily configure it to look for things like medical information, IP addresses, business entities, things of that nature, data points. So after it loads in all of the words that it's detected that it would recommend for redaction, essentially it relinquishes control back to the human user, right? So this is me back again, and I can go through and confirm, like, yes, need to redact this name, this address, this phone number. But all I have to do is review it at this point. So I didn't have to go through the painstaking process of finding and highlighting all this information. Also, if it happened that there was a word that it missed, I could go through and very easily select another word for redaction, and then you would click Apply and get all of the black bars in your interface. So that's the process end to end, right? I mean, it was pretty quick actually from a user perspective. You submit it from your application, and then you end up with a PDF that has all the red highlighting and is ready for redaction. Just to, again, give you kind of more of a peek behind the scenes, though, I'll go through this step by step. The first step is Power Apps, so that's giving us the input that's allowing us to load the file. It's actually going to store that file in a SharePoint folder location and then pass that to AI Builder. Again, AI Builder is what's running the OCR capabilities, so it is taking an image or a PDF and translating that into text. Now, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done to essentially take what is an array and append it into a single variable, so that we've done that in Power Automate. Next, we call Azure Cognitive Services, right? So we're calling out to the PII detection skill via an API. And again, some work is done to take the results of that skill, which would be an array, and put that into a single variable. But once we have that, we are triggering the Power Automate desktop process to initiate. And I can give you a little bit of a peek behind the scenes here, again, from the Power Automate desktop application, right? So this is, again, if you've never seen it, this is our RPA solution. This will allow you to take a desktop application and actually automate it by giving it the clicks and the keystrokes. It records your actions, and then it keeps this script, and you can trigger it from the cloud using Power Automate. But basically what this does, as you saw, it launches Adobe, it pulls up the file, it is going to open the redaction tools, and then essentially loop through every item in that list and select it for redaction, and then turn the process back over to the human. So that's the process end to end. Again, I feel like this is just a really incredible example of how to use Power Apps. You know, it never ceases to amaze me the way that the Power Platform and all the services involved, the creative ways in which you can kind of create them, arrange them to create really anything under the sun. So I hope you all enjoyed the demonstration. I think we'll be having some time for Q&A here at the end, but I will turn it back over to Steve.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. And just one quick thing to highlight here. So what you're showing there, Power Automate Desktop, when we talked about the fact that in GCC, GCC High, and DoD, you will have Windows use rights with Power Automate Desktop, this is the tool that you'll be able to use with the new release that's coming out at the end of this month. Now, when we showed the cloud side of that, where there was integrations and triggers from the cloud going to Power Automate Desktop, that is where you need a Power Automate RPA license for that. But if you just want to use the Power Automate Desktop tool locally, which is what Ryan's showing right here, that is the use rights that will be enabled in government clouds, hopefully by the end of this month. Now, I'm going to go and share my screen one more time. We'll walk through a couple wrap-up slides, and then at that point, we'll do a Q&A. So just give me 1 second here to get that set up. Okay, so just really quickly, just to wrap up, first off, your feedback is super important to us. It is how we can decide how we do this in the future and how we can make improvements. We had some great feedback from you all the last go around, which was our first one, and we'd love to get more feedback from this one today. There's the link there. We'll put that in the chat too, aka.ms/fedbizappssurvey. There's a couple of just little questions there. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear that, so we can always try to improve this community that we're trying to build here through this webinar series. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that for the next event in February, we're going to be having another partner, Avtex, and they're going to be highlighting their 5 trends driving citizen experience moving forward. A lot of this is going to be talking about that customer experience executive order that was signed by the Biden administration in the middle of December. So we're really excited about that one, and we hope that you all can join us for that as well. And lastly, if you want to stay in touch with us, here's some contact information. I've got my email here if you want to reach out. Prem's email is also there as well. And please feel free to reach out to us if you had any questions with regards to the things that were demoed today.